This movie will look at model responses to selected questions, which are similar to what can be found in the IELTS speaking exam. Each response will be accompanied by explanations of relevant words and expressions used, if necessary. Do not memorize these responses word for word and use in the speaking test. You may be penalized if you do.
Describe a newspaper or magazine you enjoy reading. You should say what kind of newspaper or magazine it is, for example, fashion or sport, how often you buy it, what kind of articles or information it contains, and explain why you enjoy reading it.
Well, actually, I stopped reading physical newspapers and most magazines some time ago. So I get all my current news on the internet. In fact, I use my iPad to read a special type of magazine that is not just a publication from a single source, but a collection of news feeds from many different newspapers and magazines from all over the world. It's really an app called Clipboard, which allows me to decide myself which news articles I want to read, according to categories that I myself choose.
Conversational markers are very important when you attempt Part 2. Note the use of well actually and in fact. Although the words newspapers and magazines have been repeated, there is an attempt at variety with the use of the words publication and collection of news feeds.
The great thing about this app is that it is totally free and displays all the news I want to read in a well-designed format. Really is a pleasure to read and is always the first place I head to when I open my iPad. Of course, I only get news feeds from publications that are themselves free, so newspapers that are behind a paywall cannot be viewed. However, there is more than enough free material available for me to not worry about that for the moment, although some companies seem to be switching to subscription-only services.
The second question is dealt with well, explaining that material is free. The use of vocabulary like paywall and subscription only are essential if the candidate wants to obtain a high band. Note the effective use of connectors like so and although, which indicate a good ability to connect ideas. The range of vocabulary will once again be noted by the examiner. For example, head to as a synonym for go to.
As I said, I select the articles I want to read according to category. So, for example, for my news section, I have articles from the Globe and Mail, the Independent, the New York Times, Time, and Metro. When I open Flipboard, I get the latest news articles from only those selected newspapers. They contain breaking news and news that is very recent, because the app keeps updating itself. I've also created categories for myself on travel, books and sport, which work on the same principle of drawing in articles from publications that I chose.
All prompts on the topic card given to the candidates must be dealt with, even if briefly. The candidate here refers to breaking news and news that is very recent. Note the marker as I said.
I couldn't go back to restricting myself to a single newspaper or magazine when I can have everything now. The ease of use and the variety of news I get makes Flipboard invaluable for me.
Rounding off your talk is always a useful technique and usually answers the final prompt, although that was mentioned earlier in the talk when the candidate referred to the well-designed format. Important points to remember. 1. Your talk must be 2 minutes, so speaking for 90 seconds is not good enough. There will be an awkward pause and the examiner will eventually have to ask you to continue by referring to a specific point so that the 2 minutes is filled up. 2. The candidate did not talk about an actual newspaper or magazine as the question seemed to imply, but this is not a problem because he justified the reason for talking about an electronic format news feed instead. He doesn't read physical newspapers or magazines, and this is his preferred choice. This is quite acceptable as a reason is given for departing slightly from the topic. What is not acceptable is to talk about something that conflicts with the topic. For example, it would be very unwise to talk about travelling in your own country if the topic asks you to talk about travelling in another country. Similarly, if the topic asks you to talk about a book or a film or a website, you are required to select only one and talk in depth about it for 2 minutes.